are moments in life when you feel like you're giving your all, but something feels off. Something feels like it's draining you, leaving you stuck in the cycle of someone else's need for control. And what I want you to understand is sometimes that's a sign. That's a sign that you might be dealing with a person who's not about building you up, but about building themselves up at your expense. See, when you're dealing with someone who has an insatiable need for attention and admiration, they'll keep you trapped in their world. They'll manipulate your emotions to feed their ego. When you find yourself constantly apologizing, not for your mistakes, but for simply existing in your truth, that's a sign. That's when you need to stop and look around. You don't have to apologize for having an opinion. You don't have to shrink down to make them feel bigger. If your conversations feel like you're always walking on eggshells, trying to avoid their wrath or make them feel heard, that's another sign. You're giving more than you're receiving, pouring out your heart while they take and take, yet give nothing back. And here's the reality. It's not your job to make them feel good about themselves. That's their job. It's their responsibility to find peace within themselves, and when they can't, they project that chaos onto you. But here's the truth. You don't need to lose yourself to make someone else feel bigger. Your worth doesn't come from the approval of someone who cannot see you for who you truly are. You are not a tool in their game of manipulation. You are a child of God, deserving of respect, peace, and love. If someone cannot honor that, if someone cannot love you for your essence, it's time to walk away. Don't let someone use your emotions as a playground for their manipulation. You have the power to break free, and when you do, you'll find that the peace you've been searching for isn't out there in their approval, but within yourself. Your value is not defined by their need to control, and your journey is not bound by their toxicity. Stand tall, stand firm, and let your light shine. Narcissists often manipulate your emotions to feed their own ego, leaving you feeling drained and apologetic for simply being yourself. You may find yourself constantly pouring into the relationship while receiving nothing in return, which is a sign that the other person is not invested in your well-being. If you're constantly tiptoeing around someone's moods or needs, it may indicate you're dealing with a person who thrives on control and emotional power. Your worth is not defined by someone else's approval or manipulation. It's crucial to recognize your own value and establish boundaries. The only way to regain peace is to stop allowing someone else to control your emotions and recognize that your light and peace come from within, not from someone else's validation. When you find yourself constantly apologizing for simply existing or for being yourself, it's a clear signal that something is wrong. You might feel like you're always in the wrong, as if your actions, your words, your presence are always being scrutinized, criticized, and judged. And the one who's doing this is someone who's seemingly always the victim, never acknowledging that they are the one creating this imbalance. This is often the hallmark of someone who thrives on manipulating your emotions to feed their own need for control and self-importance. In many situations, narcissists will make you feel like you're never enough, no matter how much you give or how much you try. They create this illusion of emotional support, convincing you that they are the ones who understand you best, that they are the ones who care about your feelings. But this is just a facade. Behind that mask is a person whose emotional needs are insatiable. They expect you to constantly cater to their needs, desires, and insecurities while offering you little to no emotional nourishment in return. One of the most dangerous aspects of this dynamic is how subtle and often unnoticed it is at first. At first, it can feel like they genuinely care about you and are invested in your well-being. But slowly over time, they start using your emotions as tools to manipulate you. When they see that you're a person who cares, who empathizes, who is willing to give emotionally to those you love, they use that as a way to draw you in deeper. And the more you give, the more they take. They'll never be satisfied, though, because their need for validation is never fully quenched. They need constant praise, constant reassurance, and constant attention. But the moment you start to look for that same kind of emotional care, they withdraw. Or worse, they make you feel guilty for needing it in the first place. This is where the emotional manipulation becomes apparent. Instead of encouraging and supporting you in your own journey, they will twist situations to make you feel like you are the one in the wrong. If you express a need for validation, they'll turn it into a criticism of their own behavior, making it about them rather than acknowledging your feelings. You might end up apologizing for something you never did, simply because they refuse to acknowledge their own flaws and instead project them onto you. The emotional cycle continues, and you are left feeling confused, drained, and trapped in this web of manipulation. This dynamic can be exhausting. It creates a constant state of insecurity within you. You begin second-guessing yourself, questioning your own reality, because they have planted seeds of doubt. They may convince you that your feelings are exaggerated or that you're being overly sensitive. Over time, these subtle tactics erode your self-confidence and self-worth, leaving you feeling small and insignificant. You start thinking that maybe it's you, maybe you are the problem, and that you need to fix yourself to meet their expectations. But what's happening here is not a failure on your part. It's not that you're too sensitive or too emotional. It's that you are being manipulated by someone who is more interested in using you for their own self-gratification than in being a healthy, supportive presence in your life. Narcissists thrive on the control they have over your emotions because it makes them feel powerful. They can make you feel like you owe them something, that you should be grateful for their attention, and in doing so, they keep you tethered to their emotional whims. This constant need for validation becomes a tool to keep you hooked and to keep you emotionally tethered to them. In a healthy relationship, there is a balance, a give and take where both parties are equally invested in supporting one another. But with someone who is emotionally manipulative, this balance doesn't exist. You give, they take, and you end up with nothing in return. You pour out your heart, and they walk away with the fullness of your emotional energy, leaving you feeling empty, exhausted, and unappreciated. This pattern continues until you start questioning whether you have anything left to give. It's important to understand that emotional manipulation isn't something you can fix by simply trying harder. You can't pour from an empty cup. And no matter how much you give, no matter how much you bend over backward, they will never be satisfied. This is not about you failing. It's about the unhealthy dynamic that has been created where your emotional needs are disregarded in favor of their insatiable desire for validation. The more you try to satisfy them, the more you lose sight of your own needs, your own worth, and your own peace. It becomes a vicious cycle that only ends when you stop allowing yourself to be manipulated in this way. And the first step in breaking that cycle is to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation and realize that you don't have to be a part of it. You deserve more. You deserve respect, reciprocity, and love without having to sacrifice yourself to get it. In relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, one of the most telling signs that you're being manipulated by someone with narcissistic tendencies is the constant imbalance in giving and receiving. It often starts with a feeling of one-sidedness. You're always the one reaching out, the one offering support, the one making the effort to keep things moving forward, while the other person remains emotionally distant or detached. They take from you without giving back, and before long, you may start to feel like your emotional needs are irrelevant, like you're a constant provider of energy, but with no space for your own desires, needs, or vulnerabilities to be acknowledged. This type of relationship dynamic where you're constantly giving but receiving very little in return is a sign that you are dealing with someone who is self-centered. Narcissists thrive on the validation and emotional support of others, but rarely, if ever, reciprocate. They may be quick to take advantage of your kindness and generosity, but when it comes time to give back, they show little interest. Their love is conditional and contingent upon what they can extract from you rather than what they can offer in return. You might find yourself putting in all the emotional labor. When they are upset, you bend over backward to comfort them, soothe their pain, and cater to their needs. But when it's your turn to share your struggles, or when you need someone to lean on, they are nowhere to be found, or worse, they make you feel like your emotions are a burden to them. This absence of emotional reciprocity leaves you feeling unsupported and emotionally starved. Yet you continue to pour into the relationship because you hope for the day when they will recognize your effort and show up for you in return. But that day rarely comes. The cycle of giving without receiving starts to wear you down. At first, you tell yourself it's okay because they are going through something or they are struggling with their own issues. But eventually you begin to realize that this is not an isolated incident. It is their pattern. Every time you need them, they pull away, leaving you to figure it out on your own. This constant imbalance doesn't just affect your emotional well-being, it also impacts your sense of self-worth. You begin to feel like you're not worthy of love or attention, like your needs are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. This can leave you questioning your own value, wondering if you're being too demanding or unreasonable. Narcissists have an uncanny ability to make you doubt yourself. They've spent so much time taking from you and offering so little in return that you begin to normalize this imbalance. You might even start to feel guilty for wanting something from them in return, for simply wanting to be heard, acknowledged, and cared for in the same way you've done for them. They twist the situation to make you feel like you're being selfish, like you're asking for too much, or like your emotional needs are invalid. As a result, you shrink yourself down, trying to fit into their expectations, constantly adjusting your behavior to please them. This constant pattern of giving without receiving leads to a depletion of your own emotional resources. You begin to feel drained, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well. You are constantly giving away pieces of yourself, but you don't get anything back to replenish what's been taken. In a healthy relationship, there should be an equal exchange of emotional support. Both people should contribute to the relationship, not just in material ways, but through emotional connection and care. However, with someone who is emotionally manipulative, the idea of mutual support is foreign. They believe they are the center of the relationship and that your needs are secondary to theirs. And this takes a toll. The more you give without receiving, the more you start to lose sight of who you are. You start to become someone who only exists to serve the needs of the other person. Your own desires and emotional health are put on the back burner. You begin to feel like you're stuck in a one-sided transaction where you're constantly pouring into something or someone but never getting the nourishment you need to thrive. This imbalance can even begin to feel like an addiction, one where you continuously try to meet their needs, hoping that one day they will return the favor and acknowledge your worth. But that day often never comes, and you find yourself in a cycle of endless giving and receiving nothing in return. It's essential to recognize this dynamic for what it is: emotional exploitation. You are not there simply to fulfill someone else's needs while ignoring your own. You are worthy of being cared for, valued, and supported just as much as you care for and support others. The truth is, relationships are meant to be a balance of give and take. It's about creating a partnership where both people contribute, not just in tangible ways, but through emotional investment as well. If you are in a relationship where you are always giving and never receiving, you are being manipulated. Your emotional resources are precious, and they should never be taken for granted. You deserve to be in a relationship where your feelings matter, where your needs are met, and where love and support are not one-sided but shared. It's time to recognize that you are worthy of emotional reciprocity and to stop accepting anything less. You don't have to remain in relationships where your giving is never returned. You don't have to continue pouring from an empty cup. It's okay to expect and demand the love and care you deserve. The first step is recognizing your worth and refusing to settle for anything less than a relationship built on mutual respect and emotional balance. When you find yourself walking on eggshells in a relationship, constantly trying to avoid conflict or unpleasant reactions, it's a clear sign that something is wrong. You may feel like you're living in a state of perpetual anxiety, unsure of what you can say or do without triggering an emotional outburst, criticism, or rejection. This kind of environment is emotionally draining and unsustainable, but for someone with narcissistic tendencies, it is a tool they use to maintain control and manipulate the dynamics of the relationship. In these situations, you are likely dealing with someone whose emotional reactions are unpredictable. One moment they may be charming, loving, and caring, and the next they may turn cold, distant, or even hostile over something as seemingly insignificant as a comment or gesture. You're left trying to read their mood, constantly adjusting your behavior to match what you think will keep them happy or keep the peace. Every word, every action becomes carefully calculated, as you attempt to avoid setting them off, knowing that one wrong move could lead to an emotional storm that will leave you feeling emotionally drained and confused. This pattern of emotional instability is not only exhausting, but also creates an atmosphere where you feel like you're never truly allowed to be yourself. You're constantly walking on eggshells because you're afraid of their reaction. You may feel like you're losing yourself in the process, trying to mold your behavior to fit their ever-changing emotional landscape. You become hyper-aware of their moods, always trying to anticipate their needs, desires, and potential triggers. But no matter how much you try, it's never enough. The emotional tension that builds in these situations can be overwhelming. You may find yourself second-guessing everything you say, analyzing every conversation for any hint of dissatisfaction, and fearing that even the smallest mistake could lead to rejection or punishment. This constant vigilance can cause you to lose touch with your own needs, desires, and emotions. It's important to understand that the dynamic you are caught in is not healthy, and it's not your responsibility to manage someone else's emotions. The narcissist thrives in this environment because their emotional instability gives them power. By keeping you on edge, they maintain control over you, forcing you to constantly seek their approval, validation, and affection. You begin to think that their emotional volatility is something you have to fix or manage. But in reality, it's a manipulation tactic designed to keep you in a constant state of fear and dependency. The emotional tension caused by walking on eggshells can take a significant toll on your mental and physical health. You may feel anxious, stressed, and constantly on high alert. You may experience a sense of emotional exhaustion that prevents you from fully engaging in other areas of your life. The constant need to appease the narcissist can lead to feelings of isolation, as you may withdraw from others or feel like you can't talk about the challenges you're facing. You start to feel like no one would understand, or worse, that you're the one causing all the problems. This behavior is not just emotionally exhausting, it's also mentally taxing. Over time, you begin to lose your sense of reality. You may start questioning your own feelings and thoughts, unsure of whether they are valid or if they are just a product of the narcissist's manipulation. You become so conditioned to doubt your own perceptions that you may even feel like you're going crazy. This is known as gaslighting, and it's a form of psychological manipulation designed to make you question your own reality. The narcissist uses your vulnerability and emotional investment to manipulate the situation in their favor, leaving you in a constant state of confusion and uncertainty. The truth is, relationships should not feel like a battlefield. You should not have to walk on eggshells in a relationship, constantly worrying about whether your words, actions, or feelings will cause someone else to react negatively. A healthy relationship is built on trust, respect, and open communication, not fear and manipulation. You should be able to express yourself without the fear of being attacked or dismissed. You should be able to share your thoughts and feelings without having to second guess whether it will lead to an emotional outburst or an argument. If you find yourself walking on eggshells in a relationship, it's important to recognize that this is not a reflection of your behavior, but rather a reflection of the narcissist's need for control. You are not responsible for managing their emotions or ensuring their happiness. You are allowed to express yourself and have your own needs, desires, and boundaries. It's important to set those boundaries and recognize that you don't have to live in a constant state of fear. You have the right to be in a relationship where you can feel safe, heard, and respected. Walking on eggshells is a clear indication that you are not in a healthy dynamic. It's a sign that you are being manipulated, and it's important to take a step back and evaluate the situation. The first step is acknowledging that you are not the problem. The narcissist is. Their emotional volatility and need for control are not things you should have to endure. You deserve to be in a relationship where you are treated with kindness, respect, and empathy, where you don't have to constantly monitor your every word or action. You are not responsible for someone else's emotional instability, and it's time to stop walking on eggshells and start reclaiming your peace and your sense of self. Your sense of self-worth is the foundation of who you are. It's what allows you to stand tall in the face of adversity, to make decisions based on your values, and to establish healthy boundaries with others. But when you're in a relationship with someone who's emotionally manipulative, your sense of self-worth can begin to erode. Narcissists thrive on diminishing your value and convincing you that you are not worthy of respect, love, or attention. They do this in a variety of ways, making you feel small, insignificant, and unimportant in their world. Over time, if you are not careful, you may start to internalize these false beliefs and believe that you are indeed unworthy of the love and respect you deserve. One of the most damaging tactics employed by narcissists is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological manipulation that causes you to question your own reality, your thoughts, and your feelings. A narcissist will dismiss your emotions, invalidate your experiences, and tell you that you're overreacting or being too sensitive. They will twist the truth, create confusion, and make you doubt yourself. When you're constantly told that your emotions are wrong or unreasonable, it's easy to start believing that your feelings don't matter. This erodes your self-esteem as you begin to question your ability to trust yourself and your judgment. Narcissists will also often use criticism and blame as tools to chip away at your self-worth. Even the smallest mistake, the tiniest flaw, will be magnified and turned into something that you should feel ashamed of. They will criticize everything about you, from your appearance to your personality, from your actions to your choices, leaving you feeling like you can never measure up. The harsh, judgmental comments they make are designed to make you feel inferior, to convince you that you are not good enough for their love, affection, or approval. But the truth is, their criticisms have nothing to do with your worth as a person. They are simply reflections of their own insecurities, projections of their need to feel superior to you. In these situations, it becomes easy to forget who you are and what you stand for. You become consumed by the narcissist's perception of you and start believing that you must change to earn their approval. You may start to abandon your own beliefs, values, and desires in an attempt to fit into their world and meet their constantly shifting expectations. This is when you lose yourself. You begin to shrink in order to accommodate their needs, their desires, and their ever-changing moods. Slowly, the person you once were, the confident, self-assured individual who knew their worth, begins to fade away. Over time, this emotional manipulation can lead to a deep sense of inadequacy. You may feel like you're never good enough, like no matter how much you give, it will never be enough to satisfy their need for validation and attention. The more you try to please them, the more you lose pieces of yourself. Your happiness becomes dependent on their approval, and you start to forget that your value is not determined by their perception of you. You may even start to believe that you are worthless, that your needs and desires don't matter, and that you will never be able to satisfy the emotional void the narcissist has created. One of the most dangerous aspects of this dynamic is the cycle it creates. The narcissist will praise you when they need something, and they will use affection, love, and compliments as a way to draw you in. You may feel like they are finally seeing you for who you are, but it's all a manipulation. Once they have what they want, they will pull away, leaving you feeling abandoned and confused. This back and forth pattern of praise and withdrawal keeps you hooked as you constantly chase after their approval and affection. Each time they praise you, you feel like you've earned their love. And each time they withdraw, you feel like you're unworthy of it. This cycle can make you question your own worth even more because you begin to believe that love and validation are something that must be earned, something that can only be obtained by constantly proving yourself. The truth is, your worth is not something that can be earned or taken away. It is inherent in who you are as a person, and no one has the right to diminish that. Your value is not dependent on how much you give to others or how much they value you. It is not determined by the narcissist's approval or affection. You are worthy of love, respect, and kindness simply because you exist. It's important to remind yourself that you do not need to change or shrink to fit someone else's definition of what you should be. Your worth does not come from the outside world, and it cannot be taken away by someone who is incapable of seeing your true value. When you start to realize your worth and refuse to accept anything less than what you deserve, you begin to reclaim your power. It's not about proving anything to the narcissist or anyone else. It's about understanding that you are enough, just as you are. Setting boundaries, standing firm in your values, and prioritizing your own well-being are key steps in rebuilding your sense of self-worth. You do not have to tolerate being treated as less than you are, and you do not have to accept behavior that diminishes your value. You are worthy of love, respect, and the freedom to be your authentic self. And it's time to stop letting anyone take that from you. Breaking free from a narcissistic relationship or situation can be one of the most challenging and liberating steps you will ever take. The ties that bind you to someone with narcissistic tendencies are often deeply ingrained, woven into the fabric of your everyday life. The manipulation, the emotional games, and the constant cycle of highs and lows create a toxic environment that becomes difficult to escape, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically as well. However, the moment you recognize the reality of what you're dealing with, you can begin to take the necessary steps toward regaining your peace, your power, and your life. The first step in breaking free is to acknowledge the truth of the situation. This is often the hardest part because narcissists are incredibly skilled at gaslighting and distorting reality. You may have spent so much time questioning your own perceptions, doubting your emotions, and wondering whether you were the one causing the problems. The narcissist is a master at making you believe that the dysfunction in the relationship is your fault. But once you recognize that this is a tactic designed to maintain control over you, the fog begins to lift. You begin to see the situation for what it truly is, a pattern of emotional manipulation and abuse that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their need for control, admiration, and validation. Once you understand that you are not the cause of the problem, the next step is to begin setting boundaries. Narcissists will test your boundaries, push your limits, and try to invade your personal space. They do not respect boundaries because they are more concerned with their own needs than with your well-being. Setting boundaries is not just about saying no. It's about standing firm in your right to protect your emotional, physical, and mental health. It's about asserting your own needs and making it clear that you will no longer tolerate being treated in a way that diminishes your value. Boundaries can be difficult to set, especially if you've been conditioned to accommodate the narcissist's needs at the expense of your own. But once you start to assert your boundaries, you take the first step toward reclaiming your peace and your sense of self. The next step is to detach emotionally from the narcissist. This is incredibly difficult because emotional attachment is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships. Narcissists use emotional manipulation to create a strong bond, one that makes you feel like you need them or that you are responsible for their happiness. They will often alternate between love bombing and withdrawing, creating a roller coaster of emotions that leaves you constantly striving for their approval and affection. This emotional push and pull is exhausting, and it can be difficult to break free from because you're always waiting for the next high, the next moment when they will show you the love and care you crave. Detaching emotionally means letting go of the false hope that the narcissist will change, that they will suddenly recognize your worth, or that they will start treating you with the love and respect you deserve. This means stopping the cycle of emotional dependency and learning to rely on yourself for emotional validation. It means recognizing that you do not need their approval, their affection, or their attention to feel complete. It's about giving yourself permission to let go of the fantasy of what the relationship could be and accepting the reality of what it is: unhealthy, toxic, and emotionally draining. Part of detaching emotionally also recognizing that you do not owe them an explanation for your decision to walk away. Narcissists often demand explanations, apologies, and justifications for why you are no longer giving them what they want. They may try to guilt trip you, accuse you of being selfish or ungrateful, or even try to manipulate you back into the relationship. They will try to make you feel like you're the one in the wrong, the one who's being unreasonable. But you have to remember that their behavior is not about you. It's about their need to control and manipulate. You do not owe them anything. Your peace, your well-being, and your future are worth far more than anything they can offer. Once you've begun to detach emotionally and set boundaries, the next phase is to rebuild your sense of self. The narcissist has spent so much time eroding your self-worth, making you feel like you're not enough, and convincing you that you're unworthy of love and respect. In order to break free, you must reconnect with your true self, the person you were before the narcissist came into your life. This requires a deep process of self-reflection, self-care, and self-love. It may involve seeking therapy or support from trusted friends and family members who can help you rediscover your strengths and talents. Rebuilding your sense of self also means letting go of the guilt and shame that the narcissist may have tried to instill in you. They may have made you feel responsible for their actions, for their emotions, or for the dysfunction in the relationship. But you are not responsible for their behavior, and you are not to blame for the way they treated you. You deserve love, respect, and kindness, and you have the right to prioritize your own well-being over the needs of someone who has shown you that they are incapable of providing that. Finally, as you break free, it's crucial to establish a support system. Narcissistic relationships often leave you isolated, making it difficult to reach out to others or to trust anyone outside of the relationship. But in order to move forward, you need the support of people who genuinely care about your well-being. Surround yourself with individuals who uplift you, who value you, and who will stand by your side as you navigate the difficult path of healing. Having a strong support system will help you stay grounded and remind you of your worth as you begin to rebuild your life. Breaking free from a narcissistic relationship is not easy, and it's not something that happens overnight. It requires strength, courage, and perseverance. But once you take that first step toward freedom, you begin to reclaim your life, your peace, and your happiness. You begin to understand that you are worthy of love, respect, and healthy relationships. And most importantly, you begin to see that you don't need the narcissist to complete you. You are whole and complete as you are. Oh, but let me tell you right now, when the veil is lifted, when the fog clears, when your eyes are finally open to the truth, you don't walk the same no more. You don't love the same no more. You don't settle the same no more. Because once you recognize the change, you begin to reach for the key. And once you find the key, you realize that freedom was always within you. You were never created to live under the thumb of manipulation. You were never called to bow to control. You were not built to be broken for someone else's ego. You were made with purpose. You were formed with value. And the moment you stop shrinking to fit someone else's smallness, you make room for your greatness to rise. I don't care how long you've been in the fire. There's still time to come out without the smell of smoke. There's still time to reclaim your voice. There's still time to walk away from the pain and walk into the peace. You don't have to stay bound to what broke you. You don't have to keep watering what never bore fruit. This is your season to heal. This is your time to rise. You've cried long enough. You've doubted long enough. You've been silent long enough. But now is the moment to stand in your truth, to walk in your worth, and to never again let anyone define you by their dysfunction. You are not who they said you were. You are not the label they tried to put on you. You are not the mistake, the mess, or the memory. You are the miracle. You are the testimony. You are the one who got away. So walk like you're free. Talk like you're whole. Live like you're loved. Because the story isn't over, it's just beginning.